She didn't pack a bag. She didn't take her medication. She didn't take her car. She didn't even take her wallet. The only thing missing from that house was Nancy. Her blood was on the front porch. Her pacemaker went silent at 2:28 in the morning. A masked man with a tattoo on his wrist was caught on camera leaving. 42 days later, the FBI found something new. And the only word they used to describe it? Odd. What does that mean? What did they find? Where is Nancy right now? Stay with me. Nancy is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker. She has medication sitting on a counter that she hasn't touched in 42 days. If this were your mother, you'd want someone paying attention. The least we can do is watch. If you're new here, subscribe. Because when this case breaks, you need to be in the room. We're going to break down every confirmed detail, what investigators aren't telling us, and what the word odd actually means in a forensic investigation. Tucson, Arizona. January 31, 2026. At 5:32 in the evening, Nancy Guthrie left her home in an Uber. She had dinner with her daughter Annie. They played games. They spent time together like family does on a Saturday night. At 9:48 p.m., her son-in-law Tommaso dropped her back at her front door. He waited 2 full minutes until she was safely inside. Then he drove away. That was the last time anyone who loves her saw Nancy Guthrie. Hours later, at 1:47 in the morning, her doorbell camera goes dark. Not after the suspect enters. Before. And it wasn't just Nancy's camera. Neighbors across the street later told investigators their Ring camera history from that night was marked, not available. The FBI is now investigating whether a Wi-Fi jammer was used to kill surveillance across the entire neighborhood before anyone set foot on that porch. A damaged utility box around the corner from Nancy's home is also under investigation. Someone didn't just show up that night. Someone prepared. For 41 minutes, there is no digital record of what happens inside that house. Then at 2:28 in the morning, Nancy's pacemaker stops syncing with her Apple devices. 8 minutes later, at 2:36 a.m., a neighbor's Ring camera 2.5 miles away captures a car speeding through the dark. 8 minutes. 2.5 miles. Where was he going? 10 days after Nancy vanished, the FBI released what they recovered from her doorbell camera. A masked man. A ski mask covering his face. A black Ozark Trail 25-liter backpack on his shoulders. A holster on his hip. Something in his front right pocket. A former FBI agent says it looks like an antenna. Possibly a walkie-talkie. Possibly a signal jammer. An outline of a ring visible beneath one black glove. And on his right wrist, a black and gray tattoo. Sleeve style. Extending toward the forearm. The footage also shows him using that gloved hand to cover the camera. Then moving plants in front of it to block the view. He knew exactly what he was doing. And investigators confirmed he had done it before. A dry run. He visited that street before February 1st. He studied the house. He learned the layout. He watched her schedule. He came once to observe. He came back to act. This was not a random crime. The sheriff himself said it. This home was targeted. And the question that has haunted this investigation for 6 weeks is not just who he is. It's how long he stood in the dark before anyone knew to look. Word, odd, actually means in a forensic investigation. This week the FBI found something new. Investigators recovered additional imagery from motion-activated cameras at Nancy's home. Cameras trained on the swimming pool, the backyard, and the side yard. 3 locations. Cameras that had been sitting on that property since before she vanished. But they couldn't pull video. What they recovered were thumbnail images, reduced size still frames triggered only when the cameras detected motion. And here is where it stops making sense. Those cameras captured people moving through the back and side yards in the days before the abduction. After Nancy was taken, they captured law enforcement officers near the pool. Before. After. The cameras worked. But on the night of February 1st, the single most important night in this entire investigation, they captured nothing. Not one frame. Not one trigger. Not one motion detected. Investigators have drawn no conclusions as to why. But one source described it as odd. That word matters. Because Nancy did not have an active subscription to her Google Nest camera service, meaning footage was never automatically backed up to the cloud. Investigators worked with residual data held in back-end systems, the same painstaking process that eventually produced the doorbell footage of the masked suspect. The sheriff's department is also investigating whether a Wi-Fi jammer was used during a reported internet outage that occurred around the time Nancy disappeared, an outage that disrupted nearby home surveillance cameras. Investigators are also examining a damaged utility box around the corner from her home. Someone may have killed every camera on that street before he ever set foot on her porch. The cameras saw nothing on the night it mattered most. One source called it odd. And in a case where every second of footage carries the weight of a missing 84-year-old woman, that word is the most important update this investigation has produced in weeks. 2 miles from Nancy's home, investigators found a pair of black gloves discarded in a field on the side of the road. They were packaged overnight and sent to DNA Labs International, a private forensic laboratory in Deerfield Beach, Florida. They arrived on February 13th. Preliminary results came back the very next day, Valentine's Day. The DNA profile recovered was male. Unknown. Investigators ran it through CODIS, the FBI's national database of nearly 27 million criminal profiles, and it returned nothing. Not one match. But then came the update that changed everything. The DNA on those gloves was traced back to a restaurant worker who works nearby. That person is not part of the investigation. The gloves, the ones that looked like the gloves from the doorbell footage, belonged to someone who had nothing to do with what happened to Nancy. Dead end. But the DNA race is not over. Because the DNA recovered from inside Nancy's home contains genetic material from more than one person. The sheriff confirmed the sample is a mixture. And the private lab in Florida has warned investigators directly, there are challenges with it. Challenges. That is the word they used. Meanwhile, the forensic genealogy company Othram, the same company that helped crack decades-old cold cases, called the decision to send evidence to the Florida lab instead of the FBI devastating. A federal law enforcement source confirmed the evidence will likely need to be retested by the FBI anyway. C.C. Moore, chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, said it is only a matter of time before the DNA can be traced to a specific individual. A matter of time. For a woman who is 84 years old, without her medication, without her pacemaker syncing, time is the one thing this investigation cannot afford to waste. The last time Sheriff Chris Nanos stood in front of a camera and addressed the public about this case was February 5th. That was 37 days ago. In those 37 days, no press conference. No public update. No new information released to the community that has been watching, waiting, and searching. Just silence. The United Cajun Navy submitted a 41-page operational plan to the sheriff's office. Thermal drones. Up to 25 search dogs. Ground teams ready to sweep the rugged Catalina foothills terrain around Tucson, all operating under the sheriff's command with no independent press releases, everything approved by his office first. They sat in Tucson, ready to go, waiting for one signature. Sheriff Nanos never signed off. Criminal defense attorney Sarah Azari, writing for News Nation, laid out the failures directly. Crime scene contamination. No security tape. No perimeter. 2 reporters allegedly allowed access to the crime scene. Inconsistent messaging. An unwillingness to cooperate with the FBI. Missteps. Omissions. Untimely responses. The president of the Pima County Deputies Association said publicly, "More bodies are always better than one." And now, the sheriff leading this investigation has been named in a $1.35 million civil lawsuit filed by an Arizona inmate, unrelated to Nancy's case, but active while this investigation continues. The reward for Nancy's safe return stands at over $1.2 million. Unclaimed. After 42 days. There are only 2 explanations for that. Either no one who knows something has come forward, or the people around this suspect are choosing silence. When the lead agency goes 37 days without a public update, what does that silence tell us about what they actually know? Before we go any further, stop and think about Nancy. Not the evidence. Not the surveillance footage. Not the DNA. Nancy. She is 84 years old. She has difficulty walking. She has a pacemaker implanted near her left shoulder. And she requires daily medication for a heart condition. Medication that law enforcement confirmed was still sitting on her counter when investigators arrived. She takes pills for hypertension, blood thinners, antiarrhythmics, medication that regulates the rhythm of her heart. Not optional. Not something you skip for a day and catch up on. The kind of medication that, if stopped abruptly, begins a countdown. Law enforcement officials warned early in this investigation. Being without that medication for more than 24 hours could be fatal. We are now at 42 days. Her pacemaker is still functioning. Cardiologists confirmed that even though it stopped syncing to her phone, it did not stop working. It is still inside her. Still sending electrical impulses to her heart. Still doing the one job it was designed to do. But a pacemaker cannot refill a prescription. It cannot replace a cardiologist. It cannot replicate the routine that has kept an 84-year-old woman alive and functioning for years. A sleep specialist raised another concern, that being violently awakened at 2 in the morning placed Nancy at very high risk of a cardiac event in the moments the suspect entered her home. Scientific research documents elderly patients suffering sudden cardiac incidents from abrupt awakenings alone. 7 weeks. No medication. No doctor. No routine. For Nancy, time has never been a neutral variable. It is a medical reality. And it compounds with every single day that passes without an answer. If you are in the Tucson area, if you have seen a man with a dark tattoo on his right wrist, a ring on his hand, and Ozark Trail backpack, the FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. That is confirmed. That is real. That could be the call that brings Nancy home. I'm going to update this case the moment the DNA results come back, the moment another press conference is called, the moment that reward is claimed. If you want to know when that happens, subscribe and hit the bell. Because when this case breaks, you'll want to be here.